I've decided to keep a journal.
Welcome to, I forgot the thing I say. Hey, everybody. That's so important. Welcome to Podcast For Me. You know what? Peek behind the curtain. For how many ever episodes it's been. I've never written, hey, everybody. I've just written welcome. But I remember it's private for me.
It's sincere.
Yeah, that's so nice.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Podcast For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Paul Schrader, where we watch every film written and or directed by American filmmaker Paul Schrader and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, show's hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. Jake, how was your week?
That is a different podcast that I don't think exists anymore.
We're allowed. Okay. Yeah. I do. Yeah.
I have realized we've entered the Jake zone. There's a very brief Jake period
It's true. We have entered the Jake zone.
Paul Schrader's filmography. There's 2 films in it. Mm-hmm. And neither of them are looking that good for Jakes. The Jakes are poorly represented.
Found very little resonance in this character with you.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, you're speaking of the part where Peter Boyle's Detective Mast says, have you ever seen pornography, Jake? And he says, no. You're saying that is
yes, I said, wow, nothing alike. These two people have never met in the universe.
It's a fantasy film.
Yeah, that's right.
There will be orcs soon. Yeah, I'm doing fine. How are you, man?
I'm good. Yeah. A lot of farm work this week. So I'm sort of tapped into the middle America, old world.
Middle Mexico.
Yep. It's a part
well,
of
you're
America.
Actually in Mesoamerica. So you're in the real
true.
middle America.
That's right.
If you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, we don't have a goose update, do we? Do we have any goose news?
Well, there's a bit of a goose news.
Hold on. Well, we got to bring our guest in for the goose. Okay. We are very excited to have a guest with us on the show today. Writer, actress, filmmaker, and big fan of the film we're talking about today. I'm making a decision right now. Manuela Lazić, welcome to the show. How you doing, Manny?
Hello. That's a good decision. I like Manny instead of Manuela. It's my nickname. So
yeah, we're
kind
of casual around here.
Yeah. And it's a film of pseudonyms and invented identities. And I think this is the right choice.
That's true.
And doubling
Thanks for having
as
me.
well.
And doubling, that's true. Yeah. And pretending to be someone else, looking like somebody else, looking like Paul Schrader with a mustache. That's my life.
We should mention that you look exactly like Paul Schrader. Yeah,
you do.
That's true. Yeah.
You do have the Schrader lenses, the Schrader frames, I should say. The glasses.
That's true. They're only when I'm on my computer. Okay. But I do also have. Right now, I'm recording from my bedroom, and I have a desk there that several people have said makes them think of the desk that all of Paul Schrader's men write at, because it's like gray. And I have literally 3 posters in my room, and I've been here for like almost a year, and I only put them up like maybe 2 months ago. So my room is very bare, and people were like, "This is like a Paul Schrader room."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Yeah, like it's like." You know, some girls have the Sofia Coppola bedrooms. I have the Paul Schrader bedrooms, but I'm very proud of that.
This is perfect. I love this.
Have you covered your desk in white bed sheets, like in the card counter?
You know what? I should have done that when I was away for a few weeks, because now it's full of dust. So next time.
It's very practical.
I'm not planning to kill anyone here, but at least, I do go away and I have dust. So it's a good tip from Paul that I did not follow.
Yeah,
we're mostly looking for just practical tips from these films. So
yeah, getting a lot of them. Really good tips on what to do in San Francisco. If you don't know what to do one evening, you know where to go for some fun. Yeah. Things like that. I think I was watching the film again today, and I was like, I've never been to San Francisco.
Oh yeah,
and then I was like,
that part of San Francisco still looks like that.
Well, exactly. I was like, maybe it's not the same now. And then I was like, I hope it's not the same now, but it's probably the same now.
It's worse. It's worse.
I feel like that part still has all those signs and stuff. That's right by like City Lights books. That's like that's one of the parts of San Francisco I've been to, and it still kind of has that garish quality, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's authentic.
Last garish part of San Francisco. Speaking of bare rooms, exciting announcement. Actually, this is I've put something up. In this room, I'm going to show this off a little bit. We've got the sort of Clint Eastwood
altar
wall of inspiration here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So shout out to our friend Jeremy Allison, who did the artwork for the show. Found this Bronco Billy album for me in Bakersfield for $1.
Oh,
beautiful.
Our friend Comrade Yui sent over this Any Which Way You Can album. Got Manus there with whatever the 80 equivalent of Photoshop is. They use that to put a hat on him, on Manus.
And then it's called collage. I don't know.
Collage.
Oh, wow.
And that's French. And then
collage. That's right.
We've got Clint directing Perfect World here. So I'm feeling very energized, very charged up, very strengthened at this time.
Okay.
Manny, we do have a question. Well, I have a question for you. Because we're recording this. This is our first recording, I believe, since the announcement of the Cannes lineup, which includes O Canada, Paul Schrader's upcoming O Canada, but does not include Juror Number 2, the new Clint Eastwood film. Has France fallen? What's going on with those guys?
Can we hold you accountable for their crimes?
Well, do you have any insight?
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. Yes, I mean, I am. First of all, I'm just very happy that they have Schrader, because I think he hadn't been to the festival since I checked the other day. I can't remember, but like the 90s or something. So it's amazing that he's back. In terms of Clint, I am surprised. I'm as surprised as you, because they do love a Clint. They do love a little bit of Clint over there. So I don't know. I can't say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we confirmed that it was submitted. This is sort of what I'm privately hoping for, is that he just
didn't want to
had some more tinkering to do.
Yeah, maybe he forgot about it. Maybe he forgot the deadline.
Yeah. I don't know. He's been busy growing that beard out. He's looking so good.
Yeah.
I love the beard. I love going to like 93, almost 94, and deciding now is the time to try a beard.
It's true.
It's cool. It's a cool move.
Entering a new stage.
Yeah, but not like the Queen.
It makes him look even older somehow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, how can I look even older than 93 years old?
Yeah. Well, he was looking too spry, he decided.
Exactly. But no, I can't speak for Thierry Frémaux of the Cannes Film Festival. Thierry, if you hear us, give us an explanation, because the people are upset.
Come on the show.
But I am planning to go to. I should be at the festival, so I will.
All right, ask him.
I will try and investigate, like, on the ground.
Okay.
And make a fuss.
Thank you so much.
We shall know.
I appreciate it. Someone was sending around. There was a picture of Francis Ford Coppola and Paul Schrader and George Lucas at Cannes from like the 80s, maybe. And they're all going to be back there because Megalopolis is playing and George is getting some kind of an honorary award. Very exciting.
Really cute. And I think Schrader himself, exactly. How do you say that in French? Les garçons sont de retour en ville.
Yep, I actually posted that exact phrase, but I had put it into Google Translate. And
no!
I'm so glad to know that Google Translate.
Oh, Manny, do not validate Jake's Twitter nonsense. I'm begging you not to do this. Although I believe you're talking to our friend Jesse Hawkins, so shout out to Jesse.
And he lives in Canada, and that's they sort of speak French.
That's a type of a France. Yeah,
they have to learn speak French. Well, they do kind of speak a fake French. If you have to learn it.
Yeah, get them, Manny.
Let's not start that debate. Canada.
Yeah.
Schrader
well, you know, Schrader wrote a film called Québécois that never got made.
It's true.
Wow.
Early on, yeah.
What's that about? I wonder.
I don't know. I have an unread PDF on my computer that explains what it's about, but I feel
like you need to do an episode. You need to do an episode just about this non-made film.
I was just thinking this because we'll get into it, but while he's sort of deciding what movie to do after Blue Collar, he's got another one that he's pursuing called 8 Scenes from the Life of Hank Williams. So he was going to do kind of a Mishima, but for Hank Williams, and that never got made.
Not? Sounds like a great idea.
It does. We have to do we were going to do a Goose update. Is that right, Ian? Do we have a Goose update?
I can give it to you in 30 seconds. You want to hit the button?
What was the name? It's been so long.
Taking a Gander.
Taking a Gander is what it's called, and here is the sound. Okay. Yep. What's going on with your friend the goose that you work with at the farm?
2 geese are not geese. 2 of the geese are ducks. We bought the wrong animals.
Wait,
sometimes.
How has it gotten this far without you realizing?
They're relatively young. These are some of the younger members of the flock, my Christian flock that I have. Yeah, it's it's fine. They all get along. So what does it matter, you know? Well, I guess I'd say at the end of the day, but they're distinctly, upon looking at them now, they're ducks. They're not geese.
Okay. So that's a real goose update.
It's a big one, you know?
You have to change the name.
It's true.
You have to call it goose/ducks.
Yeah.
It has to be goose/ducks. Yeah. You can't just keep it goose.
Find a duck pun.
It's bad representation.
Deuce.
That's true.
Deuce is sort of taken, though.
Guck?
Yeah.
Guck sounds weird.
Guck. Yeah, Guck, I think, is maybe... That's close to... That's one of those things where it's like not a racial slur, but you feel like it could be as soon as someone gets their hands on it.
Well, now I'm certainly thinking it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, okay, so forget I said that. Just keep calling it Goose for safety.
I'm thinking about, in a sort of Pokemon sense, do you think that which is the more evolved form? The goose is bigger, generally.
Oh, yeah, the goose is definitely bigger.
But the duck has a sort of sophistication to me. Or like
I would have said the same thing. I'm with you totally.
Okay.
You're right. The goose is a creature of primordial violence, let me tell you.
Really?
Now, France is a big country full of all kinds of people who can be whatever kind of they can be whatever kind of person they want. Okay. And I don't mean to project onto the French like that they're all chain smoking intellectuals who are smarter and better than me. So Manny, you can be whatever kind of French person you want.
I don't smoke, so I'm already an anomaly.
Everything else is true.
Everything else, yes.
But I was thinking we got to step our game up. We have a French film critic on the show, and already we're into like ducks are sophisticated. Ducks are more sophisticated than geese.
What about Cahiers du Cinéma? Is that a thing?
That is good.
I'm sorry, I forgot I have an appointment. I have to go. This is such bad timing. Yeah. I'm trying to remember how do you say goose in French. I've been in this country too long.
This happens.
Une oie. I think it's just oie.
Oh,
it's really less fun in French actually for once.
I think it's quite nice.
Well, speaking of Pokemon. It sounds like you're kind of just imitating one of the noises. Like the goose says its own name.
All right, you're after everybody today.
That might well be the origin of the word. I don't know. Let me Google Translate. I'm so embarrassed, but
I've been on Google Translate all morning looking up all of the alternate or the like international titles for this film, many of which are fun. Crazy.
So yeah, it's oie. Sorry, I was going to say the letters in French. O-I-E. You pronounce it oie.
Interesting.
Fascinating. And it's a feminine noun.
So we
have gendered nouns.
They got so much stuff going on over there. It's crazy.
That's right.
Stuff.
You mean the geese? Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
They do.
They got a lot going on.
All right. Speaking of absolute nonsense, let's hop into our segment, the 2 questions, really quick. We've already been steeped in whatever this is for quite a while. Manny, were you able to come up with a question for our segment, the 2 questions? I
was able, actually. I struggled for a while, but then I was very proud of what I found. So for this podcast, obviously, I rewatched the film we're talking about. I can say what it is because I don't know if it did, but it's called Hardcore.
Yes.
And I had seen it before, but I rewatched it from a Blu-ray that my sister lent me on my television in my flat. And my television is appropriately very pink. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm watching this pink movie on my pink TV. That's great. Mm-hmm. My question is, why is my TV pink? Do you guys know?
You got a settings problem.
I guess so, but I checked that. I keep trying to change it, but I think it might either be just old and shit.
Okay.
Or, I don't know, someone kicked it and something went wrong, but I don't know.
Have you asked anybody else if they can see this pinkness to
Everybody
the TV?
can see it even more than I do.
Okay, God.
The thing is, like, sometimes I try and take a picture of my screen to send it to someone to be like, look at what I'm watching, and it looks so much pinker on a picture as well.
Oh.
So every time, like, especially if I send to my sister and her boyfriend, they are distracted by the pink. So instead of commenting or whatever it is I'm sending them, they're like, you need to get rid of this fucking TV. And I'm like, when I can get a new one. So it just completely derails the conversation every time. So it's a big mystery to me.
Have you been to, because there's all kinds of forums online where you can look up the exact model number, and some guy has determined the perfect settings for your exact model of television, which I like to find some guy. You haven't done any of that?
No, because I'm lazy, but I should.
Yep.
No, but I should.
Yeah, there used to be television repair men. Like, I know this from, or at least there used to be in like sitcoms or whatever. Like, the guy would come and he would look exactly like a plumber or whatever, and he would unscrew the back of your TV and do some stuff back there. But I don't know if we have that anymore. I think you're just supposed to throw it away.
That's what it feels like. And that's what everybody's telling me. They're like, it's clearly just old. And I'm like, it's fine. It's just pink.
Maybe
surely,
it's kind of got some like red shift, sort of like an old film print.
it almost looks like, it's going to blow up at any moment. So that's kind of nice.
Oh,
okay. It's like an old
now
print.
I'm concerned.
Okay,
no, that's not what I mean. I mean like film that's going to burn.
Yeah,
like the TV is gonna burn.
I got you.
No, the TV is not making any weird noise or whatever, so it's fine.
If Melanie Laurent starts showing up and like declaring your evil in the evil in your souls, and the doors are locked, you should try a window or something.
I'm on the first floor, so that's quite high. But yes, I guess I'll have to do that.
Oh, the first floor, because you're in London, so that's the second floor, as we would call that, the second floor. And there's many differences. For example, I recently visited a Burger King in Amsterdam.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for the question, Manny. I hope we got to the bottom of that.
Well, no, you didn't actually give me a solution, but that's fine.
I'm going to give you one. You ready for this? Buy one of those sort of semi-transparent colored pieces of celluloid paper. You know what I'm talking
gel.
About? Just tape it. Just like a gel. Just tape it over your whole TV.
Yeah, like a
Boom.
very faint green, I think would probably
$6 fix.
Shift it
That's
back.
what I'm here for.
Yes.
Yep.
A corrective film, yes.
Right.
Like the ColecoVision. Do you know about this, Ian?
No,
Manny? No.
This
was a very, very primitive video game system that was so primitive that it came with little plastic clings that you would put on the television.
Whoa.
And then, so that was like basically, imagine like if the maze from Pac-Man had to be put onto the television.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. And then,
very nice.
Yeah. So that'll fix it. That's a great suggestion, Ian. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Ian, do you have a question? I have a question.
Hit us with the question, my friend.
Have you ever, either of you, given a fake name that was your real first name, but a fake last name, as Jake Van Dorn does in the film? He starts calling himself Jake DeVries.
I never did that. And it makes me think about a discussion I've had with my sister many times. So I have a twin sister.
Right.
And
she has a different profession, right?
No, she's a critic as well.
Yeah,
Is that
I
a
knew
joke?
that.
Okay. I was like, where have you been, dude? No,
come on.
No. And but we've never made much use of that, of our twinness, like for exams or whatever.
Pulled any parent trap tricks?
No, and now it's a bit late because now I have short hair and she has long hair, and I'm not like, she doesn't want to cut it, I don't want to grow it, so it's too late. But
well, I mean, there's a new technology I'm here to tell you about.
Sure. Yeah, we see some of it in the film.
George C. Scott makes use of it in the film.
That's true. And it looks really like his real hair. It's impressive. It really doesn't look like a wig. I'm joking. It looks horrible.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's just
but it kind of looks like a piece. Like,
Jake,
to me,
it looks
like
an insane person on the podcast.
But it looks like there's two. It looks like three, really. The kind of fake hair that a man would wear out of vanity rather than
it's true
deception.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, I can imagine, and again, I don't know anything about the porn industry, but I feel like if you're an actor going for an audition for a porno and the guy looks like that, you're not necessarily surprised.
Right.
So I think it works like in the
probably
context.
Run of the mill. Yeah.
He probably was like, nobody's going to question my weird wig. So, yeah.
Right. Or like, I would also imagine maybe like a man with very obviously dyed jet black hair who's like 65 and you can tell that he's just clinging to something.
Yeah.
Like the magician David Copperfield comes to mind as one of these guys.
Yes. There's many of those.
Ian, fake name, fake last name?
Would never use my first name. Ian is uncommon enough that I feel like you're like 60% of the way to just finding me if I use the name Ian. I wish that I could recall my brother when we were young and he was signing up for strange things that he wanted delivered to the house. He would use a fake name that he derives, I believe,
but his home address.
Yes, correct. Our family home address. So we would get these packages directed at, and I feel like this is mischaracterizing him, but I do think it's very funny that I believe that the name was derived from the anime Gundam Wing. And it was some name that no person on Earth has ever had outside of an anime. I believe the first name was Duo, and I can't remember the last name. So I feel like I'm letting him down. But that was my first experience as a 7-year-old seeing packages arrive at the house for a different person that didn't exist, and he would grab them and was like, "This is a package for me." And I was like, "Wow,
that's so funny.
One person can be many people."
I assumed you were going to say, first of all, that they were being delivered to Gundam Rhine, which I am now just fixated on. That reminds me, that's a different question, but that reminds me, when my aunt was pregnant, she was with child, and my stepmom and her mother, my stepmom's sister, they were very excited, and they were ordering a lot of clothes and things for the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought it was funny to have them delivered to Cletus the fetus.
Yeah.
And they were, I think, at like a department store or something, and wanted to have something delivered. And the person ringing them up couldn't. She's like, "Well, we can't put a middle name." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, I can send it to Cletus T fetus." And so then it was Cletus T fetus for a while. So that's
really nice.
I of course have never given a fake name. Considered changing my last name, but I've never done this. But now I'm gonna start going by Jake DeVries, I think.
That's good
because
he's a role model
for me to remember. Yeah.
Very much a hero.
He is. Speaking of which, let's get into our film for the day. We're talking about Hardcore, directed by Paul Schrader. His sophomore feature. It's released February 9th, 1979. Sort of a Valentine's Day picture.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's he there's a truism I think I first heard this expressed by Tom Hanks, that you kind of get 3 bites at the apple in Hollywood, and if you mess up 3 times, you're out. And so Schrader is aware of this, and setting up. He's got this movie set up before Blue Collar comes out, so that regardless of whether Blue Collar does well, I think it did okay. He's got another bite at the apple, and he's, as I mentioned, he's sort of bouncing between this and the Hank Williams film. So this is kind of in the hopper, and Warren Beatty is attached originally to produce and star in the film. Schrader, who's originally hired to write and direct, his contract is he's paid $500,000 to cancel his contract. We have to get into Hollywood. This is incredible. He gets paid in 1978 money. He gets paid $500,000 to briefly agree not to direct a movie that he then directs.
Incredible.
Crazy.
Yeah. So no new director is hired. Beatty is thinking about maybe directing it himself. He's working on the script with Schrader, and Beatty decides that he is not believable as a father of a 15-year-old, which is silly, I think.
He could have stretched himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They changed the character to a wife.
It's called acting.
It's called acting. Have you ever heard of it?
Exactly. Laurence Olivier style.
He's gonna have a wig on anyway. So he I think he would be terrible.
I think he's too cool himself, too hip inherently as a guy.
Well, he's too horny as well. He's like a famous,
that's also true.
Famous sex man, and so to have him play this uptight Midwest guy doesn't make any you would just be expecting him to go full depravity.
But I think that's what would have made it interesting, though. So if he had been like, okay, everybody knows me as this sex symbol, and I'm gonna play the most repressed, person possible. If he had managed that, I mean, that would have been incredible. But
it would have been, that would be impressive.
At the same time,
you're right. Playing against type.
Yeah,
always.
I think he liked being a sex symbol, though. So
yes,
I get not wanting to do that, but
so he eventually Beatty leaves the movie, but I believe some of his suggestions for the script remain, and Schrader is ashamed of them. Now that Beatty has left, Schrader is allowed to direct the movie again, but he does not have to give back the $500,000. And then Beatty claims that he decided to want to work on his movie about Howard Hughes, which
very funny line in this AFI article. I don't know if you read it somewhere else as well.
Right, it's the same AFI article that I read. Yeah.
And it says, he says that he had to urgently work on it.
Right. He had to urgently work on the 2016 film Rules Don't Apply.
Yeah.
But he does end up, instead of doing this movie, doing Heaven Can Wait, which is a really delightful
Great film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love it.
So we all win. And then George C. Scott comes on, who I think is maybe a more obvious, but I think a much better choice as a sort of bottled up father. Where are we on George C. Scott? I forgot to ask you, Manny. Where are you on Paul Schrader? How do you feel about Schrader? What's your history with
love him.
Schrader?
I love Schrader. One of the 3 posters I have in my bedroom is of American Gigolo.
There you go.
It's an Italian poster where it says, in Italian, the really long tagline. I'm going to read it because it's fun.
Please do it.
Era l'amante più pagato di Beverly Hills. Sapeva molte sulle donne. E quello che sapeva poteva costargli la vita.
Oof.
He was the lover the best paid lover in Beverly Hills. He knew a lot about women, ... And what he knew could cost him his life.
That's a good tagline.
I mean, that's a movie.
Which leads us, let's talk about your feelings about Schrader, and then we have to talk about the poster for about an hour of the podcast. We have to talk about the poster for this film.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I love Schrader. I think he's a really talented writer. Just the most original thought that crossed my mind. No, he's great. I think, I don't know if I fully understand his whole like transcendental thing, but when I watch his films, I do feel it. You know, I think I studied his texts, you know, excerpts from it at university, but like, I don't know if I understand it. But when I watch his films, I think I know what he's getting at. And I think it's he's really a very thoughtful director as well. And it's nice just to have a filmmaker who's got ideas and really tries to communicate ideas. And he's also extremely bold. I mean, I listened to your episode about Blue Collar. I think that's an incredible film.
Yep.
It's an incredible debut. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah.
When does that happen? Yeah, I love him. And I think his approach to themes that maybe scare some people is great. Like his that relationship to sexuality, to masculinity in particular, and obviously faith, I think is incredible. I loved recently The Master Gardener. I think that's like his best of recent years. And I liked The Card Counter, but not as much as Master Gardener, even though it has Oscar Isaac, who obviously I love. But yeah, I think he's a very sensitive guy, you know?
I
think he's very sensitive, and he has so much empathy for these characters. You know, Master Gardener could easily have been like a piece of propaganda, but I think he's not. I mean, obviously the most obvious example is Travis Bickle, like just showing us the psychology of these people, and sometimes having more hope than other times. Like I think Master Gardener is quite hopeful in a way that Taxi Driver isn't really. So yeah, I love him.
I think that's a great characterization.
Yeah, you kind of you may have just sort of concluded the podcast for us. You kind of hit all the points. Yeah. I'm pretty upset.
Yeah, so I should have stuck to this one film maybe.
No.
You guys have more stuff to talk about.
I mean, a beautiful summation. No. Yeah, he's fascinating because he's this intellectual American. He's essentially, there's something very essentially American about him, but he I think because of his upbringing in the Dutch Reformed or Christian Reformed, there's a million names for it, this weird Calvinist sect where he doesn't watch a movie until he's like 17. He's the rare American filmmaker, especially of the 70s, who is not raised on film. So he has this, he's at a kind of remove from it. And that's very compelling because he's like totally unimpressed by, I don't know, bombast and you know, he's the opposite of little Sammy Fableman holding the film in his hand. He's waving it away. He doesn't care. Yeah.
I wonder what Schrader's version of the Fablemans would be. Like, what was his childhood like? Really?
I mean, I think it's
sledding down a hill.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see him as I feel like he is. So many of the characters in this movie, I keep saying, "Oh, this one is Schrader." But he's in all of them, I think. Ian, you were going to say something?
No, I think you guys have covered it beautifully. Yeah, to have a devout man who sort of dreams of returning, seems like he can never go back, and as his life has gone on, he sort of gets farther from the warm hearth of religion, but also is very knowingly a degenerate, and I think is depicting that battle on screen in his heart. I think that's, you know, always going to be compelling.
But he's a voyeuristic degenerate rather than a participatory degenerate, and I think that is, he mentions this somewhere in Schrader on Schrader, which is essential text, that his experience of the sexual revolution was of a fascinated observation of the people participating in it, which I think just means porno. I think he just means
well. I think he goes so far as to say, I think he ended up with an obsession with people who live the forbidden life, which I also think is like so clearly a person who has come up in religion looking at sexual liberation, not out of a sense of like political admiration or something, but just seeing it as like acts in the world beyond this veil that he can't reach, but maybe wants to. Yes, but it's weird that he has such an interest in it and no feeling that he can be a part of it.
Yeah. This movie is an interesting successor to Taxi Driver, and he talks about how, he sort of explores the same Taxi Driver character in a series of films, American Gigolo, among them Card Counter, First Reformed, I think Master Gardener, he also kind of lumps in there. But in this case, it's sort of Travis Bickle as father. But he also, I would say this is also, to my mind, like a follow-up to Blue Collar, in that, first of all, dealing with the Michigan of it all.
Yeah.
But also, this film has a real Marxist conception of sex work, I think. Like all of the sex workers in the film, at least the female sex workers in the film, are very upfront about how it's their job. Like it's
and they talk very explicitly about like what cut they're getting, what their day rate is, their week rate, how much they're pulling down in a year, how much somebody else, their pimp, their old man, is taken off of them.
There's so much like discussion of the legality of it. Like what we offer here is female wrestling.
Yeah, those are good. Yes.
And if we take Master Charge, they list all of the credit cards, which I think is a fascinating thing. The poster, one of the greatest posters of all time.
Yeah.
However, he doesn't say it. He doesn't say the line.
Nope.
He famously doesn't say it. Yeah. He says, "Oh my God," but he doesn't say, "That's my daughter." He says, "Oh my God," and then he just says, "Turn it off," like 5 times.
Right. It's a wonderful performance.
I mean, it wouldn't make any sense for him to say that. No. I mean, he's talking to the guy who brought the film to him, so it would be insane for him to say it
to himself, though.
Sure. Yeah.
But I turned to my famous podcast girlfriend while this was on and said, "It's like you when I'm editing the podcast out loud, when I don't have my headphones in and I'm editing." To be clear, she's very supportive of whatever this is that we're doing. It's the repetitive, like listening to my own or Ian's voice saying the same word over and over again that just drives her insane. There's this, you have to have a particular callus in your mind to do audio editing.
Absolutely.
And we both have it.
Should we do a 60-second summary?
60-second summary. Let's do it. The film Hardcore is about a man named Jake Van Dorn, who is a Dutch Reformed Calvinist father in Michigan. He's the owner of a furniture company, doing great. Got a daughter named Kristen, who goes on a field trip to Bellflower, California, which is, for folks who haven't been to California, not a place to go on a field trip. Very bizarre. For a Calvinist like youth conference. Goes to Knott's Berry Farm and disappears. And he spends the rest of the film searching for his daughter, learns that she has participated in the production of an 8mm underground pornographic film, and so he delves into the seedy underworld of the Los Angeles porn and sex trade to try to find her. It's reminiscent in many ways of The Searchers, but crucially makes some changes from The Searchers, I think. And spoilers for the film from 1979. At the end, he is able to locate his daughter with the help of a kind of stand-in named Nikki. He's able to locate his daughter, who reveals that she has not been abducted or like trapped in this world. She feels loved and appreciated for the first time, and it's sort of his fault that she ran away. And then they leave together, and he abandons Nikki.
Yes. End
of the film Hardcore. What do we think? I mean, I was a little, I'll admit, disappointed by the film when I first watched it, because I mean, it's not as lurid or as like enormously upsetting as the poster would indicate. It's not body double, it's not, I'm trying to think of another, it's not what I've been led to believe that 8mm is, although I haven't seen 8mm. I was, I guess, hoping for like more depravity.
It made me think a lot of a film that's way more recent called Bastards by Claire Denis.
Oh, yeah.
Which has a similar element.
Yeah.
It's not 8mm, obviously, it's like video, but it has like, it really has a similar thing of like a guy going to find what happened to this girl. He doesn't go into, it's not the porno world, but he finds out what happened. And at the end of the film, we see the footage. And that, I mean, it's a different context. It's, spoiler alert, it's about incest, so it's different. But it's also about exploitation. And when you see the footage, it's somewhat like way more disturbing than in hardcore.
Oh yeah,
like it's fully just unbearable. Really well done. Still, like it's in films when they're like, oh, there's a camera, and then you see the footage and it's like shot by Agnès Godard, and you're like, okay,
right.
it's still shot by someone amazing, but it's it's fairly tastefully done, so it's not respectful to the actors and all that, but it's really shocking. But yeah, I agree with you that in hardcore it's somewhat soft.
Yeah,
ironically.
Yeah, it's not like Videodrome or
yes,
FX.
That's sort of what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
yeah. Videodrome punishing. Denis' film even more punishing. One of those films I was glad I was watching. I saw it at UCLA, the much mentioned UCLA in this movie.
Yep.
Saw it in a theater, and I was sort of one of those things where I'm happy that I'm a captive audience, because otherwise I might be tempted to turn off the film.
Right.
By the way, speaking of bastards, Manny, you recently tweeted a picture of Chiara Mastroianni in character playing her father.
I know.
In an upcoming film.
Whoa.
Just an insane...
It's crazy. So they've announced the competition, or like some of the film screening in Cannes, and there's this film by Christophe Honoré called Marcello Mio, meaning like my Marcello. And it's I didn't know what the plot is, but it's a picture of Chiara Mastroianni with the hat and the glasses that Marcello has in 8½. Yeah. And obviously she looks like him, obviously, like everybody knows that. But in the getup, it's even more shocking.
Incredible.
And then I found the synopsis online, and turns out it's like a sort of fake documentary, I think. It's like, it's Chiara Mastroianni playing herself. And it says, Chiara Mastroianni is surrounded by the figure of her father everywhere she goes. So one day she's like, fuck it, I'm going to become him. And so she's like, call me Marcello. I'm an actor now, not an actress. And she dresses like him, and people around her are like, okay, she's joking, right? But she wants to keep doing that. So we'll see. It could be the worst film ever made, really. But
Sure. It could be fascinating.
Yes. As a huge Marcello fan, I was I'm very much up for it.
Exciting and kind of resonant with this film. So it's actually not a total digression that I brought it up.
Yes. Not at all.
Ian, was this your first time seeing the movie?
It was my first time seeing the movie. Yeah. I also expected more luridness, but I will say we're going to get into Cale's response, I'm sure. And I've been here, Pauline Kael.
Yeah.
Maybe Paul Schrader's ex-friend at this point.
She is fully. I've determined that they had a falling out.
She decries it for not having George C. Scott's father character be more tempted by what he comes across, right? By not being more just sort of like naturally drawn to lust in the way a large majority of people are. I don't agree with that. I actually enjoyed the fact that he is like fully an observer behind a wall. That's maybe one of the most interesting parts of the film to me. So that I didn't object to. The end I do find slightly unsatisfying, but the rest of the film I enjoyed quite a bit.
Yeah, the ending, the original ending in the script, he finds out that Kristen has been killed in a car accident, totally unrelated to...
Yes, exactly.
And the studio had him change it, and he, I think, basically decides, I'm just going to do Chinatown.
That's so weird, because Bastards, again, spoiler alert, but she dies in a car accident.
Yeah.
I was also thinking of Night Moves.
Yes.
Which
Arthur Penn's.
Manny, I read your piece on Melanie Griffith from a few years ago.
Yeah.
In which I was reminded that the lead character in Body Double is also named Jake.
I know, Jake Scully. Body Double is like my favorite movie.
They're
of all
coming
time.
for me from every direction. Yes. They won't leave me alone.
Yep.
We have some good Jake representation of a very similar name. Jake Sully, of course, one of the from Avatar.
Of course, yeah.
One of the greatest Jakes in cinema.
I'm sorry. I mean, surely there's better than that. We can find someone for you. I'm sorry.
There's like the hot guy in 16 Candles, I think his name's Jake.
Okay.
I think the hunk in that, I don't know. We'll work on it. But yeah, I mean, I think what we have kind of a Travis Bickle as father, or Travis Bickle as like kind of resolved man. Like Schrader has not returned to the diary. We don't get a lot of his inner thoughts. And he is able to kind of resist the total depravity, to borrow a term from the Calvinists. Like he's able to kind of dip his toe in without ever it's not cruising. He doesn't end up of this world.
Which is what I was expecting was, I think, very much a cruising style thing. I don't know if I even agree with the Travis Bickle characterization, because to me, one of the interesting parts of the film as well is that there's like the lie that is at the heart of a lot of conservatism, whether it's political or religious conservatism, which is that you exist in this world where there aren't problems or there weren't problems.
Right.
And then something comes to disturb that, to fracture it, and that becomes a social or a moral threat. And that's why, conservatives are always talking about degeneracy or the rise of sin or whatever it is.
Which is really
kind
of a Western, that's like the plot of a Western, what you just described. Like,
yeah. I mean, Searchers is the obvious touch point here, but it's the same idea of like, there is this world where we are ignoring, to look at a Searchers, everything that makes the world bad already, right? The fact that they've colonized a country that belonged to somebody else, whatever. But you have this fantasy vision of a world at peace, that then something comes and somebody with a moral kernel at the heart of them has to try to battle these forces. And I think obviously what we find out even at the end of this film is that things were not fine in this repressive environment that Kristen grew up in. I think it's kind of underdeveloped a little bit. But to me, the reason that's so different than a Travis Bickle is Travis Bickle seems to be forged of the incoherence, the inconsistency, the disturbances of the world that he lives in. And I think George C. Scott's character imagines that things are fine, which again, I don't think is true, but it's something that I think a lot of these people in these communities believe, that things were fine or they could be fine, something like that.
Right.
But isn't the whole, I mean, when he gives the explanation of tulip,
the tulip,
like their principles, isn't the whole idea of, I mean, again, I don't know anything about the Calvinist church or anything, but isn't the whole idea that the world is actually terrible, right? That men are terrible and only some people will be saved, and that's written. And there's like, basically there's no, it's not like if you're good, you'll be fine. Like there's no good in, men are terrible, right? So to me, I mean, that's with I know what you mean by, he thought that in his community everything was fine and then it wasn't, because it's, in a way, he didn't notice that his daughter was not happy in there. But like their whole lifestyle is based on the idea that they are sinners, whether they like it or not, whether they do anything wrong or not, right?
Well, this is a great point, Manny.
So it's like, so to me, that's why the film is really heartbreaking as well. And when I first watched it, especially, I was really devastated by it. I thought it was just the best depiction of a father in a film, because he's so embarrassed. Like he's so out of his depths, first of all, but also he knows, at the end especially, he knows that it's all his fault because he's the fucking dad. Like it's if your kid fucks up, literally, sorry, it's your fault. And I just thought that in his performance, you could see the how uncomfortable he is. And I think he's not just like, oh my God, the world is disgusting, I had no idea. I think he's more like, this is what happens. This world of Los Angeles is what happens if you give in to these things that we all have. So I don't think he sees himself necessarily as like better than these people. And I think that's why he's so devastating at the end when he finds her and she's like, I wanted this. I don't think he's especially surprised. I think he's more like, this is exactly what I didn't want to hear. And the solution is what? There's no solution. Right. And that's why I don't think it's a happy ending, because yes, she goes back, but like, what the fuck is going to happen now?
Well, it's very similar to the ending of Taxi Driver, I think, where Jodie Foster's character, Iris, is sent back to her parents, but like
supposedly
the Steensmas, right? The Iris's real last name in Taxi Driver is a Dutch one that is mentioned in this film as well. There's a Mrs. Steensma. A lot of jokes about the scene where they're all getting on the bus and the woman is calling like the head count, and it's like De Vries, De Jong, that's
De
very
Boer,
funny.
De Bear. Yeah. Yep.
I learned, so on the point of Calvinists, Calvinism and Dutch Reformed Calvinism specifically seems basically like designed to break my mind and like punish me for trying to figure it out. But it's full of even more like inherent contradiction than much of Christian theology, because there is that idea of the tea in tulip is total depravity, right? And like that all,
which is, I think, what you're talking about.
All men are evil.
Yep.
But there's also this thing in I have it here in Schrader on Schrader. He's talking about.
You're talking about the unforgivable sin?
No, I'm talking about the idea of whether he believed himself to be elect.
He says, I knew I was elect.
Yes, and you have to, like, you sort of, essentially, if you don't believe yourself to be one of the elect, then you aren't. Like, there's this inherent superiority to these people.
I totally agree.
I also learned something that I didn't realize before, but it makes sense with the whole De Boer thing. This is the same church that's in South Africa.
Yep.
Like, this is some of the theological underpinning of, like, apartheid.
Well, it's those Dutch guys.
Deeply, like, they were deeply racist and anti-Catholic and all of the classic KKK type stuff. They hated the same guys. They probably hated the KKK too, just because they weren't their specific type of dude. But I think it's crucial. Like, this opening scene is really fascinating because on the one hand, it does seem kind of lovely. Like, this is this is a warm Christmas party. There's a million people there. There's kids running around. There's lots of food. And you have the whatever uncles debating like the Bible verses. Yeah. And there's a big turkey on the table and they're joking around with the kids. But then you have the character who says, like, turn off this godless garbage on the television, and it's like kids singing a song or something. And Schrader says that came directly from something that his own uncle said at one point, like, about how this is what happens. The people who aren't wanted here go to California and they make all the television and then beam it back here. And I think that's a crucial theme to me in trying to understand Schrader's position in all this, is that he is that guy. He's one of those people knocked loose. I think Joan Didion once described California as like, it's like you picked up the U.S. by the East Coast and all the people who weren't tied down, like, rolled down to the coast and ended up in California. And so he's like, at once he hates this, but he's also making a film sort of humanizing and trying to understand his own father. Went back and shot it in Grand Rapids. Everyone was mad at him in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, that's the thing that really impressed me, that when I read also that the people in town were really upset and they were like, you can't make a film like this. And they called it Pilgrim, the Pilgrim, to try and convince people. Yep. And then when they found out, they were upset. And it's so interesting when you think about it, because I think often when filmmakers make a film in their hometown, I'm guessing, for instance, when The Fabelmans, Spielberg was making The Fabelmans, it's much more like a tribute to your place,
right.
Like where you were, and people are happy because you're the guy who made it, and, outside. But Schrader, like, it's only like it's like his second film, and he's already, like, as a director, and he's already like, people are like, fuck this guy, like, he's not one of us. It's so heartbreaking because and I think you're right that it looks like such a lovely community, and obviously it's so different from anything I know, but I think he captured an authentic warmth there that you can only do if you've known it. And it's beautiful. At
once, like, the warmth, and then the sort of, as Kristen points out at the end of the film, like, there is something missing. There's, like, you can have the big brown turkey on the table without some essential other aspects of parenting. I think one of the fascinating things that, like, one of the objections of the townspeople, besides that you made a movie about pornography and shot it here, is that he doesn't shoot the newer business developments of the town, like
kind of contradictory objections. They're like, we're degenerates too. We're modern urbanists as well. I think I'm not going to lay claim to Schrader's, I think, more extreme version of this childhood, but Manny, just for some background, I grew up in the Presbyterian church, which is like a version of Calvinism, and it didn't share this level of extreme division, but you're highlighting that you guys both did a beautiful job hitting the two halves of this, which are, I think, inherently contradictory. This idea that we are all of humans who have fallen, and that's what they're debating at the beginning. That scene that you mentioned, Jake, Pelagius was this guy, like a 3rd century theologian who got rejected because he believed that people had radical free will and could be good. And basically, our friend Augustine said, no, everybody is predestined after the fall of man to be sinful. So you're right. That would sort of be a beautiful leveling of things, recognition that all things are broken. But it's met by this very confusing belief that some people are born and because of God's omniscience, of course, he knows who's going to be saved.
Right.
And that means that those people, even when they sin, that's the eye in our tulip, is that they can't basically not be saved because they are good. They have some type of inherent goodness that will lead them to God. So I think it's weird to say like we're all equal in sin, but also some of us are not equal in sin. In fact, we'll go to heaven. So I think it is hard to pull those apart because I'm not sure they really ever fit together in the first place.
Wow.
Yeah, I've asked you this question, Ian. This is one of my like theological bugbears or whatever. But the devil punishes sinners, and God doesn't like when you sin. So the devil's kind of doing the same thing God would do, but then they're also fighting. And so for me, this is just a place to hop off the train. But with the Calvinists, they're like, no. We'll reconcile all this, and it'll get so convoluted and complicated that no one will be able to understand this even after several episodes of a podcast. And we'll all have to like live in a sort of semi-ethnic enclave in Michigan and parts of the Netherlands where we like refuse to do business with the Polish Catholics across the street. It's a different way of dealing with contradiction than the one that I have.
It's true. Yeah, I don't even necessarily object to the idea of trying to hold cognitive dissonance in your mind, because I think that can be a reflection of the world itself sometimes. But
I've noticed that about
what
you.
You're talking about, Jake, is called hyper Calvinism sometimes, and they would straight up say that like black people are the children, like descendants of Ham,
right?
So they are. They will never be saved.
Those kinds of guys. They're the Ham guys. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is not the main stream. I want to say not probably the stream that Schrader was in.
Well, yeah, he talks about his, and I'm disappointed that we didn't get to this in our blue collar episode. I didn't sort of read this part of the book before that, but he talks about how some of his early sort of dalliances with like more radical ideas were basically rebellious. Like his version of getting out of town, like his version of Kristen going to
Los Angeles.
Was that he begged his parents to send him to military school. And then he got there and realized...
A classic form of rebellion.
No one else was here voluntarily. And it was really confusing. But it was military school in South Carolina in like the 50s, right? So it's deeply racist. And he rebels against this by sticking up for the one Jewish kid who's getting bullied and then like writing a book report on a book about how apartheid is bad or something. And so it's a rebellion, kind of a like middle finger to his parents that ends up maybe sticking with him as a political mindset, which I think is a fascinating thing. But there's also, he talks about the Searchers in Schrader on Schrader, and says, so the interviewer says it's a film about vengeance, which is something you seem to have been preoccupied with in your early years. And Schrader says, yes, and the price of vengeance is that you have no home. And that's very appealing in a complex way because there's a truth in it. When you indulge in these extreme forms of behavior, you have to pay a price. And even though you're acting at society's behest, that doesn't mean they'll forgive you for it. And I think, in a way, him just like becoming a director is a type of vengeance, or like this is his form of fighting back against his upbringing, even though like his mom is in the movie. And dies before it comes out, but his father sees the movie and says, I'm just glad your mother wasn't alive to see this.
Yeah.
So
tough.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No one deserves that.
No.
Rough.
And then his dad died like not that long after. So he's...
Yeah.
But to go back to what you were saying, I mean, I don't know if the point of this episode is just to debate Calvinism, but I understand.
Wouldn't be wrong, I don't think. Yeah,
we don't plan this.
Is it in a way like the whole thing of like you have to believe that you're elected, otherwise you're lost already?
Right.
Isn't that just what faith is?
It is a bit, yeah.
Yeah, but also like to me, it's just so hard to reconcile to on the one hand understand that as a human being, as a person of the world, you are damned from your very birth. You are already a sinner. But then to believe that you're like, as Ian, as you put it, like you are elevated among sinners. You are a particular type of sinner who understands you know more. And so like you get to go to heaven. So you have to at once believe yourself to be damned and saved, which is, it's tough, you know?
There's a distinction, I think, because there's like different, again, sort of streams of understandings of predestination in Christianity. And another branch, the one that I think like Methodists come from, I can't remember the name of, based on a different theologian who's not John Calvin, basically. They believe that God also knows who will be saved, but he sort of knows just because he knows how people will choose to do things in their life. So it's sort of like he's like preemptively rewarding you for stuff that he knows that you will do. And that I think that's called conditioned elect. So sort of saying like, I know that you're going to be good, so I already know you're going to heaven. But in Calvinism, the fact that it's unconditional elected, I think is even weirder, right? Because it's saying like, I know that you're going to be saved regardless of what you do. And it's sort of not a consequence of your choices. So I think it is kind of like faith, but it's weird because it's saying like, some of you will be rewarded for faith and then some of you will just not be. So sort of like, draws this strange line between even people who are believers or Christians or something.
Very strange. They shot it at Schrader's like childhood church. I believe that is his church.
Yeah, you can see his childhood home in the opening montage. Like you said, his dad and mom are in there. The factory is a factory that he worked at when he was young.
I want to talk about The Searchers. No, I don't know if either of you have seen The Searchers that recently. I recently
rewatched it.
I did.
For you know, if there's someone watching this who hasn't, or listening to this who hasn't seen The Searchers, it's the story of John Wayne, a guy who famously said "pilgrim" a lot.
Yep.
Who he plays a guy named Ethan Edwards, who is a returning Confederate soldier. Comes home,
unrepentant Confederate soldier.
Yes, he comes home to, comes home. He comes to visit, I guess, his brother or sister's family in Texas. They are almost immediately attacked by Comanches who kill everybody except that they kidnap the youngest daughter.
Well, the two daughters initially.
Right, yes. They kidnap the two daughters. And he and a sort of adopted half Comanche kind of semi-cousin with whom he has a testy and uneasy relationship. They spend like years searching for Debbie, who is the youngest kidnapped daughter. He has it in his mind that as soon as he finds her, he's going to kill her because she's been corrupted. She's been ruined by the Comanches. They've brainwashed her and also ruined her like white womanhood by having sex with her, presumably. So he's going to kill her out of a sort of mercy killing or whatever. And then they finally find her. She's now Natalie Wood. And he in a very famous scene picks her up and says, "Let's go home." Like decides not to kill her after all.
And then he brings her home, and he can't stay.
And
he can no longer.
This very famous shot, he can't come. Yeah. He can't cross the threshold. He's outside. He's, you know, the price of vengeance is that you have no home, as Schrader puts it. And so, obviously, you know, there's some resonances in this film because you have a father figure venturing into what he believes to be Comanche territory, basically. This savage, unchristian world of depravity, to try to save an innocent young girl, or maybe formerly innocent young girl. But I think what's fascinating about the film is that I think Jake Van Dorn thinks he is in The Searchers, but the film knows that he's not, because the Comanches, so to speak, are just kind of guys. Like there's that crucial scene where the Peter Boyle detective is talking to Ramada and says, like, last time I was talking to you, had a car wash or something. Like it's just business. And you get all the sense from all these women that, you know, some of them are maybe being abused or exploited, but like as many sex workers will point out, like that happens to you when you work at the bank too. Like that's not unique at all to sex work. And then at the end, it turns out she has not been kidnapped. She didn't like him. Like she crucially, you know, he claims that his wife is dead, but she just left. And his daughter then adopts the wife's name as her like porn name. Again, we get some of that doubling, some of that Vertigo stuff from Obsession, some of that. Ian and I were looking into George C. Scott had directed a couple films in the 70s.
Oof.
Yeah, there's a film called The Savage is Loose
Yeah.
That he directed.
Very strange film.
Where he plays a man whose wife and infant son are shipwrecked on an island, and the son grows up. It's like Oedipus, where the son grows up and is consumed. Like he hits puberty, and the only woman around is his mother, and so he's like driven sexually insane by his mother, who is played by George C. Scott's own wife.
Yes, adds a real layer of strangeness.
Trish Van Devere, who, by the way, Van Devere. That seems like it might be a Dutch name. But like, yeah, there's all this incest. There's all this mother-daughter stuff.
I mean, it sounds great.
And you made an incredible discovery, Jake. What else was Trish Van Devere in?
Trish Van Devere is also in a film called Hollywood Vice Squad, which is a movie about a woman whose daughter disappears and is taken to Los Angeles and participating in the pornography industry. But it's a comedy directed by Penelope Spheris. Really bizarre.
Amazing.
Coming to the Patreon, I assume. But
you should do that.
Yeah. So he thinks he's in The Searchers, but he's really in like The Botherers. Like he's just a difficult guy to be around. And I think the film is really effective in like pretty subtly letting us know this. Like we get that scene with the interior designer at the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the first hint of his repression, maybe, because everything else, like I think you guys were saying, Manny, you're right. The town looks nice. The Christmas celebration looks nice, and there's not an indication really that people are suffering from a sexual repression or sort of like passive misogyny or something of any kind. But then there's this weird moment where he goes to his like display desk. It wasn't entirely clear.
Yeah, it's
to me,
like I think it's like a showroom desk in the furniture factory.
And there's a color on the wall, Pavonine, I think they say it is.
Which I
have no idea if it's a...
It is.
Okay,
I looked it up.
Okay.
It means of or relating to the peacock.
Okay.
So there's a kind of the showboating male and the sort of dull brown female.
In Spanish, the pavo real, the royal turkey, we call him.
There you go.
Yeah. So he objects to this
color.
Sounds
like some of our episodes.
Royal turkeys. Yeah. But he doesn't even want to say, this was extremely Protestant to me. I enjoyed this a lot, where he doesn't even want to say that he thinks it's too overpowering. Right. He just says like, well, like, what do you think about the blue? And she says like, well, the set designer says, well, I picked the blue, so obviously I think it's good. And he says, yeah, well, I trust you. That's why I hired you. But what if we put more of it? And she says, well, that would be too much. And he says,
right.
What do you think? Like, why would that be too much? Is it because the colors itself? He's sort of like can't bring himself to just say, I think this is too garish somehow. Right. He just like has to like
Socratic condescension.
Yeah.
I was wondering what was going on in that scene actually until you explained it now. I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, why is he weird about this color? But okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's just like it's the sexuality of colors. You know, it's the thing that he can't address.
Jesus.
Even
like
that is too garish. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I think the peacock of it all makes a lot of sense because that's flaunting, that's display, that's showing off. And then there's some incredible scenes, both where he's explaining the tulip to Nikki, played by Susan Hubley, who is 2 days after this, February 11th, 1979, John Carpenter's Elvis TV movie premieres, where she plays Priscilla to Kurt Russell's Elvis. They met on that film. They fell in love. They got married and had a baby. And so I think Susan Hubley is having a big weekend.
Great for her.
And it's funny that she plays Priscilla because I several times throughout the film I kept thinking she looked like Riley Keough a lot to me, like especially with the eyeliner. But he's explaining things to her and she is like very astutely relating them to her own life and experience, and he'll immediately say, no, you don't understand me at all.
Yeah.
But like there's that incredible exchange, Manny, that you pointed out in your Letterboxd review.
Oh, did I?
I believe, where she says, our ideas of sex are basically the same. Like,
yes, this is so good.
You think it's so unimportant that it's not a part of your life at all. And I think it's so unimportant that I don't care who I do it with. But like ultimately it is not an important animating force in our lives. And he says, no, he rejects this outright.
Mm-hmm. He says, you will never understand a person like me.
Right.
Yeah. I think the film is variously like generous to Nikki, who again is the sex worker that Jake Van Dorn finds, like you said, kind of as a surrogate daughter and also as a guide.
Yeah, she's like
through
half
this inferno hell.
I believe Richard Brody referred to her as a Virgil.
Mm-hmm.
Some smart person's review
saw the Dante Alighieri in it. Yeah, and she says that, I get, like when he's explaining religion, she says, I get it, I'm a Venusian. She's in the Church of Venus.
We also have
also
Peter
Boyle's character. I'm a practitioner of mind science myself.
I looked into mind science or science of mind.
This is just Scientology, no? Okay.
It's very similar to me. It's a kind of new agey way of applying the Bible to, I think, maybe just like get more money or something. But
I see.
You also have Isla Davis, who plays Kristen, was like, this is her only credit. She was mostly like a yippie, and then part of the Rainbow family. She was a kind of 70s style dropout, alternative society type person who just sort of, I think, looked young and was willing to be nude and in the fake porno. And so that's why she's in the film.
Yeah.
She has she's like one of those old, remind me of those old American Apparel ads where you're like, I need to rescue this person. This is someone held against their will.
Yeah,
like I
it's
need
a good
to.
choice.
This is
like
an
an ingenue, fawn
vulnerable
choice.
person who needs someone to help them, to intervene.
Yeah.
But sorry, Ian, you were talking about Nikki.
No, I was just saying that I think to have these like new age religions, maybe it's purely condescension, but I think there's an implied question about like what makes one legitimate and the other not legitimate. Why can one be dismissed out of hand? Is it just tradition? Is it the size of the community? Is it like the self-seriousness? Because obviously I think what he objects to most in Nikki is somebody who doesn't seem to be like living according to the principles that he would recognize as being associated with any religion, maybe.
Right. And he starts to warm to her.
He does, yeah.
In a way that's quite charming and feels like they have good chemistry, I think. And then when he slaps her, it's like, it's so devastating. Like something about this, because he's relatively non-violent with the exception of when he hits Jism Jim with the lamp.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a big difference there. I think one, at least for me as a viewer, I objected to a lot more, which is not to say that I'm not sympathetic to sex workers who face a lot of violence in hiring situations and things like this anyway. But I think the film makes one feel more like righteously motivated and the other one seems just objectionable.
Definitely.
And then at the end, when he she asks him if she can come be his daughter in Michigan, and he rejects this. And at the end, he says to Peter Boyle's character, like, "Can you do something for her? Like maybe money." That's as much fathering as he can conceive of to do for this woman who clearly doesn't seem like she needs that much help getting money to get by. She's like she's capable. That to me is so much more painful than the Kristen relationship, because we don't really I don't think they touch. Like, is there a hug before she goes and gets on the bus?
I think there is maybe a brief hug.
Potentially, yeah. I think I agree with you. It's hard to I find it difficult to know exactly what he thinks, what he feels and thinks, especially near the end, because obviously there's that scene when he's found his daughter and they cry and he cries and he says, I don't know how to show love. No one taught me. All that stuff. I think it's fine. And obviously George C. Scott does an amazing job, but it's a little bit contrived. Yeah. But I think it's, like you say, it's more interesting in his relationship with Nikki. And there's a sense of him being obviously willing to go into this dark place to find his daughter, but also it kind of feels like he doesn't want to learn anything from it. Like he doesn't, he wants to, if he could forget everything he saw, he would. And that's so heartbreaking because you can't deny it. It's real, and Nikki is real. And that's the thing, like he's met her, he knows her now. And you can't just act like that doesn't exist and like that's not very possible for people to live that way and for it to make sense. I don't know, there's a sense of denial in him that I think that's why it's a bit different than a Travis Bickle, because I think he saw all these things, but he's not a vigilante. He literally just wants to take his daughter and forget about everything. Yeah. And that's so sad because at the end of the day, what's happened? He some guy died.
Show for it.
Yeah, and then he's just back. And I don't know. That's why the film really devastated me, especially the first time, because although I think the original ending may have been better dramatically, I think this one does leave you with such a feeling of waste and of him having learned nothing.
Right.
That's really great, Manny. And I think you're right in saying that the key is probably less about him actually managing to rescue, like you said, quote unquote, whether he's actually going to maintain a relationship with her, we don't know. But it seems like semi-positive, but it's that Nikki exchange where he shows, because this is another person that he could be trying to show love to, that, you know, he could be stepping up as a new type of father that, you know, we want him to learn to be, but he doesn't at all. In fact, I think like you're both saying, he indicates that he has no idea how to show somebody what they need or be there for somebody else. He just lets her go. So you're right. That is the darkest part of the ending.
But he's also not learned anything about that world. It feels like I'm like, obviously it's fine if he doesn't want to live there. That's obviously understandable. Right. But like, I just feel like it feels like he, and obviously throughout the film, you know, when he watches the film of his daughter and then when he watches the snuff film, he covers his eyes so much, and he's really trying not to see where he is and what's around him. And he has to look because he has to do things, but he's really trying not to look at things.
Right.
And even when Nikki is in the, I don't know, you call them those booths that you put a coin in the
peep shows.
The peep show.
Yeah.
He really looks at her eyes. You know, he's like, her eyes are up there. He's really trying to do that. But there's a sense of like he's just running away. And he could learn about the world if he paid attention to what he saw on that horrible journey. Like he would learn, you know, I don't know if I'm expressing this, but like he could learn about humans.
Right. No, he absolutely.
Just human nature and the sins and the sinners and what it means to sin and what it means to try and survive in an environment, like all these things. He just seems to be completely not willing to face that. And he's just terrified. And it's heartbreaking to see a grown man like that go through such terrifying things and then run away like a scaredy cat, you know?
He's like Orpheus, except like imposing the rule on himself, where he's like, well, if I don't, it reminds me of, I think we've talked about this on the show before. There was a side door in my childhood home with like a frosted window on it that I was convinced I had this weird superstition that if I looked at the window as I walked past, there would be some kind of figure waiting for me, but also adhering to this rule that as long as I didn't look, it wouldn't crash through the window and grab me.
It's an arcane right that you've
but
established.
I think this is something that Jake Van Dorn basically has set up for himself, that like as long as he doesn't look back as he goes to retrieve his love from the underworld, like it won't stick to him. And yet we see these scenes like midway through the movie where he's back in Michigan and he's just like a husk. He is the kind of Ethan Edwards, like can't return to the illusory world, like Ian, as you said, this kind of fantastical world free from sin, which is so funny because when he sees the film, it's in a porn theater that's in Grand Rapids. Like there's one, one in town.
Yeah.
The porch scene you're talking about where he's back at home is very interesting because it feels like he can't go back to these people, but also what was there originally. I think we as viewers, it's interesting because Paul Schrader identifies the film as being in support of Jake Van Dorn's conception of the world. And I think that's not my experience of the movie. It feels like you're saying, Manny, the man that we are seeing is refusing to engage with the experiences that he's having. And if we can talk about like what are the liberatory parts of sex work or porn or more transparency about sex in general, right? These ideas that we start to understand human sexuality, that women can engage with pleasure, that queer people have a place in society also, right? So these sort of like beautiful parts of making these things more visible, he puts them all in the same category, right? So know, the fact that he looks at sex toys and they're as degenerate as the industry that produces snuff films, right? Where I think probably most of us would say one is a positive recognition of bodily desires.
Snuff film corner here. There has never been produced evidence of an actual snuff film that was produced with the intent of profit, because obviously not really a scalable model. Like you have to,
No.
if you're making pornography, you can sort of keep working with the same people, and it's with a snuff film, you are inherently reducing your workforce with each film.
Also, someone pointing out that although lots of pornography is putting crime on film, this is putting an extremely actionable crime on film.
It's not worth it. Mm-hmm. There was a film in 1976, I believe, called Snuff. We're in the aftermath of porno chic, as the New York Times called it, because we have Deep Throat, and in 1972, which becomes sort of like just a big to-do. It's a fad, essentially, but it makes a lot of money. And then it also becomes kind of a like a free speech cause, because there are the obscenity trials. And so you have Truman Capote and Jack Nicholson and whoever going to see, like, photographed in line to see Deep Throat. And then in 1976, there's a film called Snuff, which purports to be like to depict an actual murder to attract publicity. And then there's an investigation by the New York County District Attorney. Basically, they bring I believe, like the Cannibal Holocaust trial, they just bring the people who are believed to have been murdered in the film into the courtroom, and they're
so
like,
funny.
"Hi," and that's the end of that. But this becomes an urban legend and is a very compelling and I think resonant for filmmakers type of question. Is like
for your Cronenberg type.
Your
folks.
Cronenbergs or your I mean, it's sort of Hitchcocky, and it reminds me of Rear Window or something. There's an inherent voyeurism to watching films and making films, De Palma, obviously. And also, especially at the time, but even now, like you come across a brief clip of something. Like this happens to me when I'm watching Fail Army compilations, and I'm like, I really want to know what happened to that guy. Like, is that guy okay? Because they always say that you're
trying to bring Fail Army to court for putting this for public consumption, showing somebody
trying to bring
on a rope swing, jumping off on the wrong side, the land
Jukin
side.
Media or something. Yeah, exactly. This guy just pulled the hornet's nest out of the tree with his bare hands. Is he dead? And they claimed that they never include images of people being seriously hurt, but like I'm just taking some guy at his word. And like sometimes I've had some of this stuff happen to me, and it feels like a serious injury, I've been on a rope swing that didn't go far out over the creek enough, and it hurts. So there's Schrader points this out also. There's a resonance to that kind of that sensation of like, what I'm seeing real? Am I, there's a sinfulness to this voyeurism inherently. I do think it's very funny that when he goes to see the Snuff film, first of all, what's the character's name?
Todd?
Yes, Todd.
With one D.
Which they point out is German for death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Todd says something like, "You seem like a man who's interested in something very interesting," which makes him about as articulate.
The Jake of the week.
Yeah, he's as about as articulate as the host of this show. I hear you're interested in interesting things. This is specifically what he says. And then he just puts on some kind of like Spanish ballad on a tape player for them to listen to while they watch this Snuff film. Weird stuff. Weird, wild stuff. But yeah, it's I don't know, there's a violence there, but also like people just doing their jobs. And I think crucially, Marilyn Chambers, who was one of the most famous porn stars of the 70s and kind of a celebrity, and I think dated some like Hollywood famous people. Also, I believe dated one of my great uncles. This is like a family story.
Your greatest uncle.
Yeah, exactly. I assume he must have been funny. No, I mean nobody with any of these genetics is
anything else.
Like, yeah. But she auditioned, I think, for the role of Nikki and was turned down for looking too wholesome. So
yeah, a couple of people rejected. Also, somebody else rejected for not being pretty enough by the studio.
Right, that's the woman who plays Cher's mortician girlfriend in Silkwood.
Yeah,
Diana Scarwood. Yeah. But I think, this speaks to the film. The film is constructing maybe even more depraved world of like sex and vice than the one that actually exists, by refusing to cast a literal porn star as a porn star because she doesn't look enough like a porn star,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also like isn't it based the whole film on a real story, like on something that happened to that Schrader learned when he was younger, that some girl disappeared and she turned up in a film.
I believe so.
And it's like in the real story, she just turned up in a porno movie, right? She wasn't like in a snuff film.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so it's like he just elevated it to a more horrible realm to make his point, which is fine. But,
it's fine to. I think it's we here on this podcast are certainly in support of people doing sex work in a way that is like comfortable and safe for them.
Yeah,
it's sex work is work and all that. I think I read once, which it makes sense, but it is funny to think about how the porn industry has one of the lowest incidences of HIV infection. Like it's much lower than lawyers, for example, because lawyers don't have to get tested every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's people are really weird about sex work.
Right. Recognizing that not that there's not exploitation, which there absolutely is. And, that's why we need to fight for more transparency, better rights. But the idea that so many people who are objecting to these things are really objecting to them on sort of like moral grounds that end up lumping all these things together. They lump together snuff films and consensual homemade tapes that people sell themselves and sort of like worker collective, beautiful manifestation. But because they're just objecting to the general prurience that they identified, I don't think they're really able to see, like a Jake Van Dorn, the distinction between what makes one of these actually upsetting or actually exploitative. And, what is actual sex slavery versus what turns out to be somebody who's just unhappy with their community, choosing not to be there anymore.
Right. Finding a way to make a living that is maybe in some ways unsavory, but like so is a lot. Like so is I've had a lot of jobs that are unsavory and like against my moral values. And none of them were pornography. They were just like shitty places to work, Well, one of them at the video store there was pornography there, but
some of them were basically pornography.
And honestly, it was weird because it was like we got in new movies all the time, but it was all the same porno. Like they never updated it.
Okay,
that was enough for. And like, who is renting DVD pornography? I'll tell you one person, and I guess maybe I'm blowing up his spot. Tommy Chong came in all the time to rent.
Wow,
he would rent like of Cheech and Chong, like the Tommy Chong comes in, and he'd rent like. To my recollection, he would rent, real movies and then like a couple of pornos too. He would rent, as they mentioned in the film, perhaps a film by Antononi.
Yes.
And
so
then
good.
A lot of really good lines.
Some 1985. I guess we got a lot of the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-rays. This is a boutique Blu-ray brand that will sometimes do like a restored version of a classic porn film, which is cool. Not for me. But, it is,
maybe, they just love physical media.
People do love physical media.
That's true.
It's just better.
Good to be an advocate. Yeah.
And there's some of Paul Schrader's peers got their start making, like Abel Ferrara and Cronenberg, I think both directed some hard or softcore pornography, I can't remember, early in their career. So some of those things, I guess, are worth preserving. But again, I'm not renting that.
If we just want to talk very briefly about just the aesthetics of the film,
yes,
I think I enjoy other critics sort of identify this like inconsistency in tone, but I think it maybe makes it a special film where you have sometimes remind me of like a Le Samurai style discordant organ playing, and these shots of there's a shot of an airplane landing shot from like another airplane or a helicopter that I just realized is like, that's a choice you can make that makes it 10 times more propulsive to watch. And then you also get these humorous diversions where you get, like what we're talking about. Peter Boyle, I think, has a lot of the good humor lines in the film. And then
talking about
Dick
ice cream.
Black coming up. Yep, exactly.
Sorry.
Yes.
Dick Black, by the way, played by a guy named Hal Williams, who for podcasty listeners, longtime podcasty listeners, is Detective Powell, Clint Eastwood's first partner in the film The Rookie, the one who gets killed at the beginning.
I didn't notice this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is cool. And yeah, he's very briefly in the film, but it speaks also to kind of the blue collar of it all, where he's there is racial discrimination in hiring in this industry as well, because it's an industry. But the film shot by Michael Chapman, who shot Taxi Driver and We'll Shoot Raging Bull. That the score by Jack Nietzsche, who scored Blue Collar as well.
Yep.
Some of it you see like when Jake first gets to the kind of porno district, which by the way was shot in San Diego, even though that part is supposed to be LA, but I guess they couldn't find like a porno district in LA. The music, if it's supposed to make me scared of this, it's not working. This is making me
talking about like the heavy distortion guitar stuff.
Yeah, and like the kind of
about?
spooky discordant thing is like, oh, this seems like you're making this seem like the cool place to be. This is like the.
I agree. I think, I don't know. I think the film, again, like it's unclear whether like what it really thinks about all that world. But I think there's a real uncanniness to it. Like, especially the first time I watched it, I just felt it feels really eerie to me. There's a sort of, it's sort of suspended. Also because I genuinely, watching it the first time, I genuinely was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, things could go terribly. She might die. He might never find out. He might die. I don't know. Like it, suspense. But I think there's a real sense of, like it's a suspended moment. Also because we always watch Jake, but we don't know what his internal monologue, he's as we usually do.
Yeah.
And he's so closed off. So you just watch this guy, and the cinematography is beautiful. And it's like you follow this unknown in this world that is scary, but he feels so removed from it. So it's like there's a void in the middle of the screen. So to me, like everything, and the music helps with that as well. It's also like, is it like organs?
There's some, I think there might be some glass harmonica at the beginning.
Right.
Like,
okay.
There's like where it's almost discordant, where he's in Grand Rapids at the beginning, the glass harmonica, which is like a bunch of glasses of water set to different tones, where because there's some weird, like it sounds like an organ, but there are too many overtones, and it's like ringing together, and some really interesting kind of experimental stuff going on. And then at least on my Blu-ray, that guitar that you mentioned, Ian, comes in so loud that it's like in the mix that it's like violent, and it scared me. But as you said, that suspension is a really good description of the tone of the film. Like,
right. And as he's wandering around the scene you identified earlier, where he goes into one of these massage parlor places where they give this speech about nude body to body contact, $20, word for word, and then he goes to the next place and it's repeated. It's this like hall of mirrors,
right?
And you're right. We don't even see Jake like reacting to the idea of physical sex work, like prostitution.
Right.
He's just he looks like exasperated by his inability to like make his way further into this labyrinth. He just has like no sense of progress, which I think is very like you're saying, suspenseful as a viewer. Is he going to make any strides to finding his daughter ever?
My girlfriend pointed out that so often in films that have sex workers in them, that like the man who's usually there for some other purpose, who wants to talk to them, is like completely alien to them, and they're trying to, they literally are rejecting this man, saying, wait, no, I want to talk to you. And they're like trying to take his clothes off, which is apparently pretty counter to, like, a lot of sex workers just see people who want to like talk to somebody. This is a very common service. So that's sort of a contrivance for the film, as is, I believe, the bondage club, where he crashes through the paper walls of all these different sort of fantastical.
It's so
cinematic, though.
It's so cool. Yeah. It's very Giallo. I was thinking also
it's edited very Giallo.
Of Tightrope, the Clint Eastwood film that we've talked about on the film or on the podcast before, where he kind of like Cruising is like drawn into this world a little bit.
Well, in Tightrope, he's already in this world. Right. That's what makes it unique, I think.
Right.
And participant himself.
I do kind of like, I disagree with Pauline Kael here, where I think it's more interesting, or it is at least validly interesting, that Jake doesn't, like, he at no point is tempted.
I agree.
Because there's first of all, so few films where you have a male and female lead where there isn't like a sexual relationship that develops between them. It kind of reminded me of The Late Show, which is another film from around this time that I really like, with Art Carney and Lily Tomlin, where, I mean, he's too old for her and he has kind of a fatherly relationship with her, but at no point is there any question of them having sex. I like that, she comes into the the hotel room and he puts his shirt back on and she's like, what are you doing? And he's, he's being proper. Like he's being.
Yeah. But there's also a sense of, he also just doesn't understand things. Like, when he first goes into one of these places and they explain, body to body, or maybe it's when he's finally in a room with one of these girls and he wants to talk and she asks him stuff. And he's just baffled. He's like, "What? Like, no!"
Right.
And it's really endearing because he doesn't have the language. Like she can't say things directly. She has to say another word. And then she's like, I think she says like, "Pull out your cock," and he's like, "What?" And she's like, "If you're a cop, you can't do that because they said it's entrapment." And he's just like, have you seen this girl? There's like a real like.
How do I explain this to you in a different way? Yeah,
she doesn't understand him, and he doesn't understand, and it's like another language almost that he just doesn't have. And I think that contributes to the feeling of like suspension, like I was saying before, of like this guy is just not like, how is he gonna get anywhere? Doesn't understand the landscape at all, and it's that's why it's also very endearing, I think, because you feel sorry for him. But yeah, I love it.
I'm getting the sense that he might remind you of your dad in a way, because you keep mentioning that this is like a quintessential dad film. So I'm wondering if you see any.
Well, let's think about this.
Very 1979 accusation to make of somebody.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there anything? Is your dad sort of sometimes out of his element, or is he?
I think you're right. I think that's to me like a dad trying to connect with his daughter. This is so personal, but okay, fine.
I mean, as much or as little as you want.
No, it's fine. No, I think it's a shared experience. Like, I don't think I'm unique in that way, but I think there's a sense of like, I need to protect her because she's a woman and the world is tough and she's a girl and I don't know what the fuck women do and think and want. And to me, there's a sense of him in the film, not my dad, going into this world where women work and they do things and they have a voice and they're working and they're independent, but they're also a bit exploited maybe. And he just I don't think he knows how to interact with them. And like with Nikki, he feels sorry for her, but also, clearly she's going about doing what she can do best she can. And I don't know, I think there's a real, and the embarrassment of just seeing women's bodies, obviously, but also just having to deal with them on this level, because in his, I was going to say in his country, in his community, it's so not like that. It's the woman is so how do you say, she defers to the man,
right?
And then she cooks and she's homely and she's not sexy necessarily. And the young girls are just young girls and they're not assumed to have any sort of desire for anything. They're just good girls and they go to church.
Although we do see them in that one scene where they're talking about playing chicken, and there's the curious line where Kristen says, "What does it do?"
Yeah, yes.
What does it do? What does it achieve?
But that's the thing. Even if they don't know what it does, they're curious because that's normal. That's human.
Yeah, they're just curious. They're kids, and like that's something that's so frustrating about. I was reading a little bit about obscenity law, and none of it was that interesting or funny for the show, but. So often in these descriptions, there's been various like legal definitions of obscenity in the United States, all of which tend to revolve around like determining whether something has social or literary or artistic or political value, like whether it serves some function, which is just rooted in, I don't know, a very Christian and like I guess sort of a Protestant work ethic almost idea where like I was thinking of, Ian and I were talking about this, like doesn't that make like fireworks obscene? Or like they talk about
like candy. What does candy do?
Yes, they talk about in the film they're going on a roller coaster. By the way, theme park corner. Knott's Berry Farm never had a ride called the Great White Knuckler. I don't know why he made that up. Also, Walter Knott, the founder of Knott's Berry Farm, insane conservative guy. He was in the John Birch Society, like a total right-wing nut job. Really fascinating guy. But like roller coasters don't serve like a literary or artistic function. It's pure
political
pure
value,
bodily. It's just like a thing to do. And I think
is entertainment value a thing, or
entertainment
is that
value
not relevant?
I don't know. Yeah, like
well, I think you're right, Manny. That's the weird thing is that's not in itself seen as something that is a function.
Right.
To just say like make somebody happy, that's not one of the functions that you can say
it's
something
not useful.
has.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the point of being happy anyway?
Yeah.
It's
a great
well,
question.
It's funny because, you know, there's two fathers. So there's a lot of doubling here we've mentioned. Also, I do want to point out Dick Sargent, who plays the young.
Darren.
He's the second Darren on Bewitched because there were two Darrens. So they replaced the actor.
Yes. So wait, that's where he's from?
Yes. Bewitched.
Yes, that's his like most famous role.
Oh my God. I watched that when I was a kid. It's called, in France, it has a funny name. It's like really cheesy. It's like Ma sorcière bien-aimée or some shit. It's like not Bewitched. It's like a phrase.
Like my wife is a wizard. Or
I think it's something like that. Like my wife is a witch. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But oh wow, that makes so much sense.
But
he is the ultimate interchangeable white man, ineffectual.
Exactly.
Also.
Yes. And he by the way, in Mexico, of course, in the film was called Donde está mi hija? Where's my daughter?
Yeah. Yep.
And the Portuguese title translates to The Girl in the Hot Zone, which is really what they should have called Silkwood, because she gets irradiated.
That's the girl in the hot zone.
Yeah, there's
You're saying two fathers.
Two fathers. Yeah, I realized, so Schrader's dad was in the pipe business, not in the euphemistic way that's mentioned in the film. He was a literal layer of pipe. But Grand Rapids is it was at one point like the furniture capital of the country. Like it's an enormous furniture making town, which is an interesting intersection of art and usefulness, right? Like making a chair has a use. But what
is that an art object or not?
And we haven't talked about this, but an early so he falls out with Pauline Kael, Schrader does, because she says I can get you a critic job in Seattle. And she was nurturing him as a critic. He says, I don't want to do this. Or can I think about it? And she says, if you want to think about it, that's saying no. So you have to say yes. He mentions that he refers to, I think many years later, he's describing she has like her fleet of young critic acolytes. And he refers to Seattle as like Rhodesia. Like she wants to set him up in like a colonial outpost in Seattle, but specifically Rhodesia. So he turns this job down, and she never forgives him for rejecting criticism to become a filmmaker. And her review of this film is pretty scathing and pretty cruel.
It's nasty.
But his second, another like early mentor was the designer turned filmmaker Charles Eames.
Yes.
Who famously made
the guy who made the chairs. Oh, I didn't know he was a filmmaker as well.
Yeah. Oh, he's a really
Ray and Charles Eames.
Charles and Ray Eames.
Very cool films.
They made a lot of like industrial films and experimental things. There's a really cool DVD box set of their stuff. Criterion should put it all together because it's really cool. There's a film they made called Tops that's just spinning tops, that it's like so fascinating. It's so cool.
Amazing.
They made a film called Powers of 10 that people may have seen. Yeah.
Of course.
So,
wow.
Yeah, really cool stuff. And so he was an early like mentor to Schrader, and I think it's interesting that he found another chair maker. I don't know. That's about it.
Although I also think that's good because, of course, Charles Eames famously in his design focused on like what do people need, what serves people, in sort of like the most humble sense. So
yeah,
I do want to shout out briefly my father, since we're talking about fathers.
Shout out,
listener to all episodes of the podcast,
Dad Ryan.
So he'll get here eventually. I guess he is kind of himself descending into this nasty world of podcasts for me. So I want to say thank you. But he is trying to understand it, not like Jake Van Dorn.
Don't look back, Bill. Don't turn around.
Yeah. Yep. So that's
my dad is not allowed to know about the show. He doesn't yet.
Well, my dad doesn't understand English, so I'm safe.
Perfect.
Thank God.
Well, if he wants to learn, this would be a good place for him to start, I think.
I don't think he wants to learn. I think he's good. I'm safe.
Gonna have his own "that's my daughter" experience, saying, "Who are these people she's spending time with? These like idiots."
Anytime when I try and explain to him what my job is, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
You know? Or when he comes to London, he's like, "Why are they driving on this side? I don't. What's happening?
Well, that is a good question.
Is everything £10?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know.
It's true. It's a sick world, London, in that
swinging.
sense.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Is it still swinging over here?
It's not swinging. It stopped swinging a while ago.
Decidedly not swinging.
Yeah.
Very still now.
Stationary London.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do we have any Any more thoughts that we would like to get to? John Milius, frequently mentioned on the show, is a producer on this film.
One of the favorite fascists of the podcast.
Yeah. Along with Buzz Feitshans, who's he's like just a Milius guy, but a name that I love to see in the opening credits of any Rambo or Conan film or whatever. He was just like Milius' producing partner.
Nice.
Well, I want to let Manny have the last word here.
Please.
So I'll just say that the only piece we haven't mentioned that I enjoyed a lot is this discussion they have, I think very close to several of the conversations we have mentioned between Jake Van Dorn and Nikki, where Jake Van Dorn tries to tell her, like, if you were inside of this, you would understand it. There's no way that somebody from an outsider's perspective can understand the Reformed Church or basically the world that I live in. And she says, but if you look at anything from the inside, it makes sense. I mean, you should hear perverts talk, which I think is, again, Paul Schrader thinks that he's arguing for Jake Van Dorn, but that's such a devastating takedown of all ideologies that sort of say, like, well, we have the truth, and if you're outside of it, you can't understand it. And it requires the internal logic of the thing to understand the thing. And she says, well, that's true of anything. Well, that's not a good argument for something being right. And I think that's very powerful.
I agree.
Yeah. And Paul Schrader, certainly on the outside of this world, I think.
True. The sex world.
The sex world, especially when that line when Ramada says that when Jake is pretending to want to finance a
great
movie.
Scene, really good scene.
Great scene, and great inclusion of the New York Film Festival poster prominently in the office. Like,
so good.
But when Ramada suggests that Jake starts small with child pornography,
oh my god!
First of all, I mean, I guess just a joke, but like on all levels, doesn't make any sense, because even as like a joke about it being the same as the film industry. Child pornography, of course, illegal and thus like much higher risk than making adult pornography. And also just like the distribution channel is totally different. Like it's just, I mean, not to...
good. Yeah, you tell Ramada, man. Tell him why his argument's not good.
I guess, do we think he's fucking with Jake? Maybe he is, but...
that scene is funny because at first I think at first it looks like he's like, oh yeah, maybe I can get money from this guy, but then he's like, I'm way better than you.
Right, I made
you
$5
go and
million.
start with kiddie porn. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a silly scene. I don't think it's, but it's good to, clarify that this is not coherent.
Yes, there is an incoherence here. And
very wrong.
I want to discourage anyone listening to this who's thinking about producing illegal pornography. Don't do it.
Don't do it. And definitely don't start with kiddie porn.
It's
not the place.
We are opposed. It's the official position of this show. We are opposed.
Yeah, very brave of us.
Unlike other podcasts.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Exactly. Every podcast that hasn't made this explicit. What's the deal?
How are you supposed to know?
Yeah, it's a lot like Calvinism in that way. You have to explicitly elect yourself. You have to believe yourself to disapprove of child pornography, or else you approve it. On that note, do we have any final thoughts?
There is one other thing I wanted to ask you guys what you think about. So, of course, there's the director of one of the films that has a UCLA t-shirt, and there's jokes about him being from UCLA. But then also, I know the film is from 1979, so it makes sense. But there's also like a lot of Star Wars things.
Yeah.
There's like a Star Wars
he asked
poster.
Lucas for permission to have the two girls fighting with lightsabers.
That was so funny.
Hilarious.
He's also, outside of the window of one of his hotel rooms, you can see the Chinese theater that's playing Star Wars.
Yeah.
And this basically identical view is in Old Boyfriends, which comes out the same year from a Schrader script. I wonder if they shot it in the same building. And I think Star Wars is just, it's suffusing everything at the time. There's a Star Wars poster in Kristen's room, which to me feels weird because I don't know that like 15 or 16-year-old girls at the time were into Star Wars. I would believe maybe younger girls, but like I think it's been a boy thing for a while. And also like if she's Dutch Reformed, Christian Reformed,
is she even watching this?
I don't think she would have earthly,
secular
worldly things in her room. Secular.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. There's a lot of Star Wars here, but what is Star Wars except a film about a man who goes to rescue a poor princess who doesn't really
leaves a small town.
Oh,
yeah.
Exactly. Was
that your question, Manny? Was your question, is Star Wars the same as hardcore?
Yeah, I was like, I see
I
the
think
parallels.
so.
Do you? No,
That's what I thought.
Yes.
All right. Did you have another question besides that?
No, that's
Okay.
it.
Oh, but the UCLA of it all. I mean, I think
Yes,
that's maybe Schrader just like poking fun at himself. He did go to UCLA.
I see.
As did
To say,
both of us. But
I mean, he's a creepy little guy who's maybe wants to be a talented director shooting what is ultimately low cinema.
Yeah.
And also,
he's also annoying.
yeah, exactly.
And
Very
like
annoying.
the wallpaper starts peeling mid shot, and he's like, "Fix it, but don't stop."
And then
Fix
later there's a reference. Nikki says, UCLA professor's writing a book about me, which I think seemed like a shot at like the academic treatment of sex work or like academic trying to understand the world of sex, but I think a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
I was reading about stag films. There's like a lot of
what Jake Van Dorn calls porn. Yeah, I know what they are. Stag films.
Yeah, but the stag film as like phenomenon has apparently been studied a lot in academia as this like homosocial space where like men get together to kind of express their sexuality among one another
together.
Yeah. Well, there is technically no woman present in the room.
Yeah.
It's just like document of
very interesting.
That's fun.
Very interesting, and you seem like a man who's interested in interesting things.
One of those, yeah.
All right. Do we feel
Always.
good about this? Is this our episode on hardcore? Are we ready to return to Grand Rapids? Having learned nothing?
We can go home again. Yeah, let's do it.
Yes. Unlike Jake, we'll be fine.
Unlike Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not you, Jake.
No, well, maybe. We have one thing we forgot to do this on our blue collar episode. We have to do this. We have to do it here. We have a recurring segment on these Paul Schrader episodes. So recently, Schrader was introducing a screening of one of his older films in New York, and he had this to say about a new project.
I've never written a script about sexual obsession, and so that's the one I'm doing now.
So Schrader says he's never written a film about sexual obsession.
Well,
he's
what he says is,
doing it
I've
now.
never written a film about sexual obsession, which I think is important.
He's eating a candy bar at the same time, and he just couldn't keep it in.
Yeah.
And our question on this show is, has Paul Schrader ever made a film that is not about sexual obsession? And so this one, is it, though? Honestly, it's a good question.
I think it is.
Oh, wow. Bold. I like it.
Well, I think I agree with you.
It's intensely unerotic, but is that the same thing as not being a film about sexual obsession?
He is obsessed with his daughter's, I guess, like sexual purity in a way.
I don't think that Jake Van Dorn has no sexual obsession to me, but to me, it's a film about the sexual obsession of others, perhaps.
Yeah.
He says that everything is about sex. TV is about sex. It sells people. This is for sex. This is because of sex. So this is like a film about sexual obsession to me.
Right. What we talk
but it's
about
also
when we talk
a film
about
money. It's also
It's
just
true.
a film about money to me. Like it just so happens that, I mean, maybe, he's right. Like the world is obsessed with sex and, money is sex and it goes together. So her way out was through sex because that's how you make a living. So yeah, but I don't know. To me, when you say like a film about sexual obsession, I imagine more like a film where someone is consumed by that obsession.
Yeah.
And I think
Right.
he the whole point is that he's not, and he completely refuses to even imagine that can be a thing, which is his mistake. So maybe I agree with you, Ian, that it is kind of about.
But you're right. Yeah, it's negation is an
directly.
affirmation. Sort of like it's about it because he is not himself sexually obsessed.
Yes. He's
Yeah.
obsessed with avoiding sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll put this in the maybe category. Let's do a quick bonus round because we didn't do it on the blue collar episode. We got distracted. Blue collar, is it about sexual obsession? I think it's an easy no for me. It's just not
Also
really
gonna
a
give it a
concern
no.
with it.
I was trying to see if I could summon, but no, you're just gonna force it. No, yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe they do seem to have high libido, these men, but it's not really like the driving force
No, it's not.
of the film. The driving force of the film, of course, is the famous car
Yes,
they're all working
that is-
on. Manny, do you think, is there any sexual obsession to you at the core of the hardcore of blue collar?
Well, if you take the sort of Freudian idea that the sex drive drives us
Of course.
at all times, then sure. but I don't think so.
And that's some of that continental wisdom you guys got cooking up over there.
There you go.
So thank you.
Yes.
It's been an absolute delight having you on the show, Manny. Thank you so much to, I'm going to go full name, Manuela Lazić, for joining us on the show today.
Manny, what a treat.
Thanks for having me. It was amazing. I had a great time.
Extremely quick turnaround with this whole booking. It's been almost like a dream, but nice.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on? Is there anything folks can check out, anywhere they should find more of what you are doing? Or maybe the answer is no. You're making a face.
Yeah, I just didn't think about it. I'm like, my life is
what a selfless
empty.
approach.
I believe you have a website.
I do have a website that I need to update called mannylazić.com. Otherwise, the best place to find what I'm doing is Twitter. Oh, X, formerly known as Twitter, but I will just keep calling it Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where I am. I post my writings and random thoughts about films and my life.
And pictures
of
Chiara Mastroianni in a hat.
Yes.
Yep.
As often as possible. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was so fun. And I can't wait to listen to the next episodes and to catch up on the ones I haven't listened to yet, because Schrader is precious to me.
He's a precious man. Yeah.
He is a precious,
very precious
little man. And I'm imagining holding him in my hand. He's standing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I meant. Yeah.
It feels so nice. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I will also say I finally felt justified in our tulip segment, which we sort of let drop off, and I wondered if it was of any relevance, and then it turns out, yes, it may.
But we don't really need to do it here because it's all in the film, because he describes the tulip.
Is tulip in the film? Yes, quite literally, explicitly, it is in the film. So,
what are the chances that the acronym would also be the famous Dutch flower? You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think it was invented as kind of a mnemonic, so the chances were high. In fact, it was
very high.
But also, it's not quite right, because each letter stands for two words.
Yeah, classic.
So it's annoying.
Cheating in this.
Yeah, you actually can't.
The way to remember it, you know. I don't know.
It should be TDUELAIGPS.
Whoa, thank you for doing your homework. Wow, terrific. I love it. Yes. Yeah. And
it doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well.
If I could be Jake for a second, Irresistible Grace, our guest on next week's episode.
Yeah. Irresistible Grace will be joining us. That's about it. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review, helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad, crucially. And what's another thing people can do?
Put an ad in the classifieds.
Put an ad in the Los
caps.
Angeles Free Press, which Paul Schrader worked there. That makes a little appearance in the film, a little cameo. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Podcasty for me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Paul Schrader podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Thanks again to Jeremy and Comrade Yui for the lovely vinyl records that are on the wall here. Next week, join us for Old Boyfriends, in which we will say the same thing about Star Wars being out the window. And with that, we are forgetting it, Jake. It's Hardcore Town.
Yes. Yep.